The CNN town hall was already buzzing before the cameras even went live. Rows of folding chairs filled the studio floor, each one occupied by voters, journalists, and political aides who knew tonight could be the kind of night people talk about for years. Bright white-hot stage lights poured down from overhead, casting sharp shadows on the gleaming floor and washing the stage in a blinding glow that seemed to strip away any place to hide. On the edges of the stage, sleek cameras rolled slowly along their tracks, their lenses gliding like predators in search of the smallest flicker of emotion. Every seat in the room seemed alive with energy, some faces tense and tight-lipped, others already grinning with anticipation. You could almost feel the heartbeat of the room, quick and restless, as the countdown clock ticked toward zero. And then from the left wing, Donald Trump appeared. He stepped into the light as though it were his natural habitat, the polished leather of his shoes clicking sharply against the floor. His posture was straight shoulders, squared chin, lifted just enough to suggest that he wasn't just here to speak, he was here to dominate. The smirk on his face wasn't the kind that invited connection. It was the smirk of a man who believed he had already won before the first question was even asked. For him, this was familiar territory, a stage, a spotlight, and an audience to conquer. From the front row to the back, heads turned. Some eyes sparkled with admiration, others narrowed with skepticism. But regardless of which side they were on, every single person in that room seemed to share the same unspoken thought. This will be another night where Trump walks away on top. The murmurs in the crowd faded into a collective hush as he made his way to his seat. Somewhere in the control room, a producer counted down in a low voice, 3, 2, 1. And just like that, the show began. Trump leaned toward the microphone, his hands resting casually on the podium, as if he were delivering a victory speech rather than answering a question. With the ease of a man used to commanding a room, he looked directly into the crowd, then into the camera lens and spoke slowly, making sure each word landed. Americans, he began, his voice steady and confident, are eating better than ever before? A few polite claps broke the silence scattered across the room. The applause wasn't thunderous, it was hesitant, almost obligatory. Still, Trump's smile widened, not because of the support, but because of the statement itself. It was the kind of smile that didn't seek agreement, but dared anyone to disagree. For a brief moment, the room seemed split in two. Some nodded in quiet approval, ready to believe the picture he painted. Others shifted in their seats, their eyes narrowing, as if the words had brushed against a truth they knew didn't match their own lives. Trump didn't flinch. His gaze swept across the audience like a challenge, lingering just long enough on a few skeptical faces to make it clear he wasn't here to be questioned, he was here to set the narrative. From the shadows just off stage, Jasmine Crockett stepped into the blinding circle of light. Her pace was measured, not rushed, not hesitant, but deliberate, the kind of walk that told you she already knew exactly what she was about to do. In her right hand, she carried a small brown paper bag. It looked ordinary, even unimpressive, creased at the edges, its top folded over twice. The cameras instinctively shifted toward her, zooming in on the bag, as if it held the answer to a question no one had asked yet. She didn't look at the audience, not at first. Her eyes were fixed on the man at the other podium. When she reached her spot, Jasmine set the bag down on the desk in front of her. The sound was small, just a soft crinkle against the microphone, but in the hushed room, it cut through like the crack of a whip. Trump's smile faltered. It was almost imperceptible, but the cameras caught it, the subtle tightening around his eyes, the brief pause in his breathing. In that instant, the confident smirk he'd worn since walking in seemed to lose a fraction of its grip. The bag just sat there silent and unassuming. But the tension in the room shifted, as if everyone sensed that inside it was something far heavier than its weight could explain. Jasmine's fingers moved slowly, almost ceremoniously, as she unfolded the top of the brown paper bag. No one in the room made a sound. The cameras zoomed in the frame, tightening until the bag nearly filled the screen. She reached inside and pulled out a small, half-crushed packet of crackers. The plastic wrapper was wrinkled and torn at the corner, the kind of snack you'd expect to find at the bottom of an old backpack. Then came a single banana, its peel spotted brown, the stem bruised and soft. Jasmine held them up, one in each hand. Her voice was calm, but it carried the kind of weight that makes you lean in, even if you don't want to. This, she said, letting the word hang for a moment, is the only lunch a child in Ohio had for the entire week. A ripple of murmurs swept through the audience. Some people shook their heads in disbelief. Others just stared at the items in her hands as if trying to process the scale of what she just revealed. Somewhere in the back, a sharp gasp broke the silence. On the split screen, the camera caught Trump's expression, his lips pressed tighter, his jaw flexing just once. The confident air he'd walked in with was starting to thin. The crackers and bananas sat in front of Jasmine, now small and ordinary, yet heavier than any stack of policy papers could ever be. They weren't just food. They were evidence. Jasmine didn't rush. She placed the banana and the packet of crackers neatly on the podium in front of her, as though arranging exhibits in a trial. Her eyes never left Trump's face. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, steady, controlled, but with an edge sharp enough to cut through the air. "Mr. President, how do you explain this to a hungry child?" The words landed like a stone dropped into still water. No splash, just deep, unshakable ripples. The murmurs that had been stirring in the room vanished instantly. Every camera in the room swung toward Trump. Every pair of eyes in the audience locked onto him. You could hear the faint hum of the stage lights, the subtle creak of a chair as someone in the back leaned forward. For a long beat, Trump didn't move. His hands rested on the desk, but his fingers twitched once, betraying a reaction he didn't voice. His smile was gone now, replaced by a tight, unreadable expression. Jasmine didn't fill the silence. She let it grow. Let it become heavy enough that everyone in the room could feel the weight of it pressing down. In that moment, it wasn't just a question. It was an accusation, a line drawn in front of him, daring him to step over it. Jasmine reached beneath the podium and pulled out a thick folder, its edges worn, its cover stamped with the unmistakable USDA letterhead. She held it in one hand, the brown paper bag still sitting in front of her, like silent proof. Without breaking eye contact with Trump, she opened the folder and drew out a single printed page. The paper was marked with neat columns, dense text, and at the top, a bold title that made the control room immediately cut to a close-up: USDA Internal Report Distribution, Warehouse Closures. She lifted the page for the cameras. "This," she began, her tone crisp, "is an internal USDA report dated this year." A click from her remote and the massive screen behind them flickered to life. A map of the United States appeared stark and simple. Across it, 14 large red X's marked locations from Kansas to West Virginia. "These," Jasmine said, pointing toward the screen, "are the 14 food distribution warehouses that were shut down in the last 12 months. The red X's burned against the pale map like open wounds. A hush fell over the room as the audience registered the pattern. "And if you're wondering where these warehouses were," she continued, stepping slightly to the side so everyone could see the screen, "let me help you. Every single one was in a rural, low-income community." Gasps broke out from a few corners of the crowd. Others leaned forward, scanning the map, recognizing their home states. Jasmine didn't look away from Trump as she delivered the final line. "You didn't just close buildings. You cut off the lifeline for entire towns." Jasmine didn't break her stance. With a subtle gesture, she clicked the remote in her hand. The map on the screen faded to black, replaced by a grainy video feed. A figure appeared, face completely blurred, voice digitally distorted. Only a simple label in the corner identified them: former USDA official, anonymous source. The room leaned in. You could feel the tension thicken, as though everyone knew they were about to hear something that wasn't meant to leave a closed-door meeting. The voice came slow, deliberate. "We were instructed to prioritize cuts in low turnout, high minority districts." The words landed like a hammer strike. A sharp intake of breath swept across the audience. From the middle rows, someone gasped, "Oh my God," loud enough for the mic to catch. The witness continued, unshaken. "We were told not to touch areas with strong voter participation, but to focus on places where people wouldn't fight back in ways that matter politically." Gasps turned into low murmurs. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others sat frozen, staring at the shadowed figure on the screen. On the split screen, Trump shifted in his chair, crossing his arms, his jaw tightening. But he didn't speak, not yet. Jasmine stayed silent, letting the whistleblower's words fill the air like smoke, heavy, inescapable, and impossible to ignore. Jasmine's hand slid under the podium again, this time pulling out a much thinner folder, black with a red stamp across the front, that read in bold, all caps, "IRS Confidential Audit." The murmur in the audience grew louder, as if they sensed this next reveal would be different, sharper, more dangerous. She opened it slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a single page. It wasn't cluttered with paragraphs of text, just clean cold numbers in neat columns. At the top, the heading read, Budget Reallocation Fiscal Year. Jasmine held it up for the cameras, the paper trembling ever so slightly, not from nerves, but from the weight of what it contained. This, she said, her voice slicing through the air, is an IRS audit of federal food program funds. A tap on her remote and the big screen behind her lit up again. The audience gasped when they saw it, numbers in black ink, each line followed by a destination. Again and again, one name repeated, bold and unmistakable, Trump National. In the past fiscal year, Jasmine continued, her tone tightening, 1.2 billion, that's billion with a B, was redirected from food program budgets straight into renovations for golf courses and luxury resorts owned by the sitting president. The camera zoomed in on the screen, highlighting the phrase Trump National as it appeared over and over. Some in the crowd shook their heads, others let out quiet exclamations under their breath. Jasmine glanced briefly at Trump before adding, while pantries closed and school lunches were cut in half, this is where the money went. For a moment, no one moved. The page on the screen might as well have been an indictment. Jasmine didn't look away from Trump as she reached for a small black device on the podium, a portable speaker, its red recording light already glowing. Numbers are one thing, she said calmly, but I want everyone here to hear how those numbers sound when the cameras are off. She pressed play. A burst of background noise filled the room, the low hum of conversation, the clinking of ice in glasses, the faint echo of laughter. Then a man's voice cut through, smooth, relaxed, dripping with self-assurance. When you cut food for people who don't vote for you, the voice said casually, you got money to do something amazing. The words seemed to hang in the air like smoke. For a split second, the room was frozen, every person processing what they had just heard. Then came the reaction. Gasps, sharp whispers. A woman in the second row muttered, unbelievable, while a man near the back shook his head, his jaw clenched. The camera caught Trump's reaction, his mouth tightening, his eyes narrowing, but he didn't speak. The voice on the recording continued faintly in the background, but Jasmine paused it with a single tap. This isn't a policy discussion, she said, her voice now carrying a cold edge. This is contempt served with champagne. And with that, the room erupted not with applause, but with raw, boiling outrage. From the middle rows, a tall man in worn jeans and a faded ball cap slowly rose to his feet. The lines on his sun-weathered face told the story of decades spent working the land. His hands, rough calloused, rested on the back of the chair in front of him as he cleared his throat. His voice came out low and gravelly, each word carrying the weight of someone who'd held it in for too long. I voted for you twice. He began, his eyes locked on Trump. Now my wife skips meals so our boy can eat. The words didn't echo, they sank, the kind of truth that doesn't need volume to fill a room. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the usual shuffling in the seats stopped. He didn't raise his voice, but his tone cut through the stillness. We believed in you. We thought voting for you meant we'd be taken care of. He paused, his jaw tightening. But right now, I can't even tell my kid he will be fine because I don't believe it myself. A few people in the audience bowed their heads. One woman pressed her lips together, blinking back tears. On the split screen, Trump sat stiffly, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. But all eyes were on the farmer, a man who wasn't asking for pity, just telling the truth. From the far left of the room, a woman in a faded denim jacket slowly rose to her feet. Her hands trembled as they clutched the strap of a worn canvas bag slung over her shoulder. She didn't look at the cameras, didn't look at Trump. Her eyes were on Jasmine. Her voice wavered before she could even finish the first sentence. Last week, I had to choose between buying my son's asthma inhaler and buying dinner. The words cracked halfway through, but the meaning was crystal clear. I bought the inhaler, she continued, her lips quivering, and we ate toast for 4 nights in a row. The silence was absolute. Even the air felt heavier. Her shoulders shook once, then again, as if she was trying and failing to hold herself together in front of strangers. She lifted a hand to cover her face, but her voice still escaped raw and shaking. No one should have to make that choice. Without hesitation, Jasmine stepped down from the stage. The heels of her shoes clicked against the hardwood floor, but the sound felt muted in the stillness. She walked straight to the woman, bypassing the cameras, bypassing the formality of the hearing. And then she wrapped her arms around her. No script, no politics. just one human being holding another. The woman leaned into the embrace, her sobs quieting her hands, clutching the back of Jasmine's jacket, as if afraid to let go. In that moment, the policy debate was gone. All that remained was the undeniable truth of human need. Jasmine reached beneath the table and pulled out a small, carefully folded American flag. Its creases were sharp, the kind only formed when a flag is prepared for a soldier's funeral. She set it gently on the committee table, the cloth making a soft thump against the polished wood. The camera zoomed in the stars and stripes filling every television screen. "This," she said, her voice steady but low, "belonged to a veteran who fought for this country." She let the words linger in the air, then she added, her tone tightening, "But his grandson is hungry tonight." The weight of that sentence landed hard. In the audience, a man in the back row lowered his head. An older woman pressed a hand to her mouth, fighting tears. Trump shifted in his chair, his hands clasping a little too tightly. The flag lay there, silent, unblinking, demanding an answer no politician could twist away from. Jasmine stood with one hand resting gently on the folded flag. Her gaze swept across the room, not just at Trump, but at every senator, every camera, every viewer watching from home. Her voice was calm, but each word landed like a hammer. "Tell me," she began, pausing just long enough to make sure no one could look away. "Can a country that can't feed its own people still call itself great?" The question hung in the air, heavy, inescapable. Trump's eyes dropped to the table. For the first time that night, he didn't try to interrupt, didn't smirk, didn't speak. The silence wasn't empty. It was the kind that forces people to feel. Somewhere in the back, someone muttered, "No," under their breath. The cameras captured it all: the flag, the question, and the man who had no answer. Jasmine straightened her back, the folded flag still in front of her, and took a deep breath. "Enough talk," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the heavy silence. She reached into her portfolio and pulled out a crisp stack of papers. "This is the feed first act," she declared, holding it high so the cameras could see. "An emergency fund so no school, no family, no child in this country will go hungry again." She laid the bill on the table with a decisive thud. Every page carried signatures: teachers, veterans, single parents, farmers, ordinary Americans who had written their names in hope, not politics. Food before politics, dignity before profit. "This is what greatness looks like." Jasmine continued, her tone rising with each word. Around the room, murmurs turned into applause. Some senators shifted uncomfortably, realizing the cameras were catching every second of their hesitation. Trump leaned back silent, his once confident grin replaced by a tight jaw. The Feed First bill sat there glowing under the harsh lights, not just as a proposal, but as a challenge no decent leader could refuse. Jasmine leaned toward the microphone, her voice steady but burning with urgency. "Don't wait for Washington," she said, her eyes locking with the camera lens, as if speaking directly to every viewer at home. "Start with yourself. Donate, volunteer, speak up." Her words weren't just a plea, they were a challenge. In that moment, she wasn't talking to politicians. She was talking to America mothers, packing school lunches, veterans at the VFW hall, truck drivers, on the night shift retirees watching from their living rooms. "Greatness isn't measured by the wealth in our pockets," she continued, "but by the hands we extend to lift others up." The camera zoomed closer, catching the fire in her eyes. The unwavering determination carved into her expression. For a few seconds, nothing else existed. No chatter, no shuffling papers. Just her voice echoing across the airwaves, daring the nation to move. And somewhere far from the bright lights, people began to. Real strength isn't a title or a bank account. It's choosing to do the right thing when it's uncomfortable. A crumpled paper bag with crackers and a bruised banana can expose more truth than a stack of polished speeches. Don't wait for distant institutions to fix what's in front of you. See the need, feel it, enact, check on a neighbor, support your local pantry, show up at school boards, vote like dinner's on the ballot. Greatness is measured at the kitchen table by whether people eat. If stories like this matter to you, don't just watch it, join us. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell, so you never miss the truth the headlines skip. Drop a comment with where you're watching from, share this with one friend who cares, and be part of a community that exposes injustice and stands up for what's right. Your click isn't just a number, it's a louder voice for dignity.